It's very rare to find research and the results of guest and operator surveys on the topic of sustainability and what exactly guests want. So when something comes along, I want to hear about it. And that's why I invited Rachel Bowers onto the podcast to talk about her project and what it means for the glamping industry and eco resorts. So if you're interested in what you need to do to attract eco-tourists and the younger generation with renewable and green practices, then welcome to episode 58. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is the business of glamping and unique holiday rentals. Rachel, thank you so much for coming today and speaking to me. It's brilliant because this is an industry that over the years has suffered a little bit, that it's not had very much research done. Research, as we know, is a very expensive exercise, and this industry, glamping, eco resorts, eco hotels, is actually quite young. And the changing preferences in the different generations we're going to talk about today is also very young. So when I hear that someone's done some research, and it may not be in the country that I'm based, but it certainly gives lots of indicators in numerous countries. I'm always very interested. But before we go into that and the research that you've done, I'd really like to hear a little bit about you and what's got you interested in this and where you've come from and your aspirations for the industry. So tell me a bit about that.
Sure. Thank you so much. And again, pleasure to be here on the show today. Thank you for having me. Just a little bit about myself. I'm fairly new to the eco-sustainable travel sector. However, I've been in the hospitality business on my own. Started out small, like many of your listeners here. Had our first Airbnb operation in 2016, and then had numerous ones to follow. So that's really where I started in the hospitality industry. And after getting into that, having numerous properties and then starting to manage properties and startup properties for others, I found that I was really enjoying myself. I really loved what I was doing in this space. And I wanted to actually do a total transition at that time. So, I was also simultaneously running and managing my own yoga studio. So I was in the health and wellness sector as well, doing hot yoga and following that sort of passion. But I really wanted to take the next step and really dive in headfirst into hospitality. When you find something that works for you, for me at least, I go all in. And that's when I decided to go back to school. I never thought I would get my master's degree, never wanted to get it. I was in a successful sales career prior to the yoga studio. And I said, I don't need to go back. But I found something that was really interesting and passionate for me, and then went in to do a dual degree at Swiss Hotel Management School. And that's where I got my master's in international business and hospitality management. So from that, it just kind of kept snowballing. We had our master's thesis that we had to do. And I really started to dive into the eco and sustainability space during my research, and found it extremely interesting and fascinating, and absolutely something that we should all be educating ourselves on moving forward.
So what is it about this particular area of the industry that you're interested? Because there's so many different parts to the hospitality industry. And I know from experience that when people kind of start dipping their toes in, they get really passionate about it, or they leave it behind them because it's completely not for them. But this has obviously gripped you. It's gripped you properly. And why specifically eco? And what is it about that that's interested you so much?
Sure. So I think, I've always been very interested in newer technology, the looking into the future. Let's say what's happening next, where are we going, what direction are we going in? And I think if it weren't for the exact timing of, I was doing my master's during COVID, and we started seeing all these rapid changes within the industry. And I think we were already going in the sustainability and eco-friendly space as a whole in hospitality. But I think it definitely expedited that process where you saw more people wanting to get away from it all, get out into nature, reconnect, distance themselves from others. And also, with the work from home order, you could now travel during the week. You could travel, get in your car, drive an hour away. So I found it to be really interesting looking and said, okay, wait, there's something really big happening here. There's somewhat of a revolution happening. You might say it's related to the fourth industrial turning. This is where we are at right now. So I found that to be really fascinating. And I also was kind of scratching my head when I was really diving into it and say, okay, well, what's going on here? We have all these hospitality leaders in the world, and it seems as though they're stuck, right? We're not really moving forward at the pace we'd all hoped for. And, with Paris Agreement and all these different things in place, we have these sustainable goals as a whole, but it seemed like there was a problem in the industry, or a challenge in the industry. And I thought, okay, well, I'm really into this. I want to know more. I think, I've got a child, and of course that also heightened my awareness of taking care of planet Earth, right? Because this is what we're going to be leaving for our children and future generations. And we definitely need to start making some changes. So that's where I said, okay, let me dive into this, see where I can help out, see what I can, sort out and find solutions to moving that needle a little bit further in hospitality, more so on the small and medium-sized enterprise space.
Mm. So it's really interesting that you say that, because I've heard that from quite a few people, especially after COVID and after lockdown, and many people talking about those clear skies from no aeroplanes, and the obvious and very tangible drop in pollution that we were seeing everywhere because people were just not as active as normal. And realizing that actually a big change in behavior can bring about significant benefits to the environment and everything else. So you're not the only one who's talked about this, but I think probably what you are the only one that I've come across who's actually done some really significant research, which is fantastic, particularly linked to the eco hospitality industry. But whereabouts in the world does the survey kind of cover? Because I know you're based in Germany, yes?
Right.
So where does it cover? Just Germany, or is it wider than that? Tell me a bit about how you set the survey up.
Sure. So initially I went into this because I was looking, I guess you could say for selfish reasons, looking at how can I get that competitive edge in my own business? Where am I going to take this? And now I've got, I'm finishing up my master's, doing the thesis. And I said, well, why don't I do something that I can apply to my own business here, where we find solutions in the space that aren't outrageously expensive. If we're looking to start to head in the right direction, get that competitive edge or the pioneer advantage, what should we be focused on, right? We don't, as of right now, there was a big gap in the research in terms of guest preferences. So I wanted answers to those questions. And I also wanted to see how COVID had impacted the decision-making process and the perception of value on eco-innovations in a post-COVID travel era. So those were essentially the answers that I was looking to get in this study. And I didn't, me being an American and living abroad, I really wanted to make this more on a bird's eye view globally, just to see if we could find any sort of generalized trend among younger travel groups. So this, the study was with Germany in mind. However, it was also put in place as, at the end, we made somewhat of a starter pack for SMEs that could be applied, all around the globe.
So when we're talking about SMEs, that's small and medium enterprises, yes?
Correct, yes.
And so just touching on there for a minute, just so we get a flavor of what you're planning for your own business. What are your plans? What are you hoping to set up?
Sure. So what I was looking to do is fill the gap, right? Provide something where the demand was not being met. And what I found is that there's still a fairly large gap. You've got, if you're looking to travel sustainably, you don't have a lot of options, particularly here in Germany. It's a massive issue where you either have to go camp with no water in the middle of a rainforest, or you're paying $1,000 a night to go to an eco hotel or eco resort, I should say. And I really wanted to provide with my own concept something that was obtainable and affordable to the general public, to people that are just, instead of going to a normal hotel, paying 150 to 250 a night, um, and continue in this wasteful way, provide them with something sustainable and make it obtainable for everyone in the general space. I think the only way to really move the needle is to make it more mainstream, more affordable. Luckily, we do have glamping, which is, I think, starting to fill that gap, which is wonderful. But eco-friendly and sustainable practices are not always synonymous with glamping. So I think that's why, I'm happy to speak here today and help anyone out there that's looking to take their concept, their existing project, and just start to slowly convert it into a more sustainable long-term operation without breaking the bank.
And actually what you're doing is fantastic. You're looking to see where the gaps are, and then you're trying to fill those gaps with your own offering, which means it's much more likely to be a success. Many people don't do this. They certainly don't do the kind of level of study that you've done in terms of this survey. So what was the kind of age group of the people that you surveyed, and what kind of numbers are we talking about here?
Sure. So it was actually a little bit slower response than I was hoping for, but we were on a 4-month time scale because we did have deadlines with the master's program. But I think we got a good amount of participants considering the circumstances. We did not pay anyone for their participation. It was an anonymous isolated approach where we sent out a Google link survey on numerous different platforms, Facebook, other social media platforms, LinkedIn, business professional networks, alumni networks. And I also sourced some data from some of my own guests here in Germany at my Airbnbs. So that was really helpful, that we weren't just getting participants that are, oh, I want to travel eco-friendly. I wanted to get the perspective of just normal travelers that might not have even thought about traveling sustainably, to see where they were at and what their opinions look like. So in total, we had 32 participants in the study. So that was our quantitative part. And then the second part was the qualitative survey. So I interviewed 3 successful eco hotels in Europe, UK, and North America, to see what their best practices were, what they found to be successful and working for them.
What were your kind of overall snapshot findings of this survey?
Sure. So overall, what we found, and again, just to kind of touch a little, or to touch on the profile of the travelers, right? So we had a focus specifically on the younger travel generation. So we were specifically looking at generations Y and Z. So within that space, we're looking at those travelers that are typically paying between 100 and 300 per night, the majority of them. So it is very specific. I think it's important to mention that we're not talking about eco resorts. We're not talking about your backpackers. We're talking about the people that would be booking in this space. So from that, we found that the top eco innovations that would likely have the biggest return on investment and value, or bang for your buck, I should say, would be switching over to bio-organic food, doing plastic-free facilities or low waste facilities where you would have receptacles that could sort all the different trash. You would have high value as well with solar and clean energy. So something like LED light bulbs, solar panels. And then most interesting finding, I think, was actually the electric vehicle chargers. While there wasn't a huge amount of demand for it, what I found interesting was that we had 4 electric vehicle owners participate, and all of them were largely influenced by having an electric car charger on site. They said that would be potentially a decision for them. If they had an option between one that had one and one that didn't, they would likely always choose the one that did. So I found that to be interesting as well. Overall, to put it all together and with a bow on it, you could say that the visual attributes have the highest value or perceived value among these travel generations. So meaning, if you can see it, they automatically, it improves the guest journey, it improves their value perception, and their overall satisfaction, meaning higher reviews. They leave feeling good about where they've stayed. We found also from some of the interviews that some of these higher end resorts were practicing sustainable, they were adding in eco attributes, but it was not visible. So let's say a gray water, reusing gray water, or pipes being wrapped, stuff that the guests were not aware of, they didn't see it. So therefore there was little to no value there. Meanwhile, these sort of innovations can be quite costly. So you have to think, as a small business owner, is it really worth implementing this? Is it really worth replacing my entire HVAC system when the guests might not even know about it? They might not appreciate it. And in turn, we're not getting any better reviews. We're not getting more bookings, and we're not charging a higher daily room rate.
That's really interesting, because actually, even though it may be more expensive, it might actually bring some better environmental benefits, but because the guest isn't seeing it, they're not valuing it, and therefore yeah, that's very interesting. So return on investment isn't so good on those particular items.
Right.
Just jumping back very, very quickly, because I realized as I was listening to you, not everybody understands what generation Y and Z means. Can you just give us a quick summary of the profile of those people?
Sure. So it varies a little bit. If you do a Google search, you might find slightly different answers. But generally speaking, Generation Y are the millennials. So they would be born between 1983, give or take, till about 1996. And then from 1996 up until, give or take, 2011, 2012, we have our Gen Z. So we're looking at people that are between, I would say, 10, 12 years old, all the way up to 38 years old would be, I guess, essentially our future generations of travel that we should really be looking at, particularly Gen Z.
So why do you think it's so important for the environmental hospitality space to be thinking about that particular generation? Is it because they are, you tell me your perspective of why that might be.
Sure. So I think COVID obviously changed quite a bit, where we started to rethink our wasteful ways. Like you mentioned, we saw clear skies, there was dolphins swimming around in Venice, and, we started to see nature start to come back together. And I think we all liked it. We're like, wow, this is kind of nice, right? So I think it's changed, number one, at least for millennials, their way of thinking. I believe from what the research suggests, that Gen Z are the most eco-conscious generation yet. They're the ones that essentially have to reverse some of the damage that's been done to the planet. They understand the concept of global warming. They understand that this is not a sustainable way of living. And they're the ones that are really driving sustainability as a whole. You can see it not just in hospitality, but with a lot of the other products and discussions going on that are targeted at this generation.
And also EVs. So I wanted to touch on that point that you raised there. So it's really interesting, because one of the things that's coming out is because electric vehicles are seen as a way of supporting the environment. I mean, there's a big debate over that in the first place, because of the fact that, people do question the batteries, the damage of the batteries, the constant having to replace the batteries and things like that. So, that's a whole nother debate for another day. But it is something that is starting to come out with feedback that we're getting from guests from the industry. So actual businesses running at the moment, the feedback they're getting exactly the same as what's come out in your survey. And the whole idea that someone with an electric vehicle has what we call at the moment range-itis. They need to know the range they have and where will they be able to charge up en route. And although many of the vehicles do actually have an indicator of there's an EV point coming up, or there's an EV point on your route, and so you can plan your route, there's definitely this sense of, if I'm staying somewhere, I want to know that I can plug in and recharge. And so it's becoming quite an interesting guest magnet, a booking magnet, which is on similar levels to hot tubs, believe it or not, is also a bit like that. But whereas EVs are debated as being a bit more environmentally friendly, hot tubs are not debated as being environmentally friendly. They very, very much are not, because the chemicals they use, the energy they use, the filtration, everything else is seen as not environmentally friendly, although it's nice for the guest. So there are kind of alternatives to the hot tub. And I wondered if there are alternatives to the EV stations. So, whether, I don't know if in your survey there was any feedback about, if there was an EV station nearby rather than actually at the guest accommodation, would that also be okay? Is that something that you talked about, or was it very much they said, no, it needs to be on site?
Yeah, and that's a great question. All very good points there. So we had to narrow down the focus on it, so that was not a part of the study. But I do think that for anyone that wants to pick up on the research, that would be a very good point to add in to get clarity on that and get more of the specifics on the preferences for each of the eco-innovations that were recommended.
I think it's really interesting as well that what you've highlighted in this guest survey is essentially customer magnets and methods for magnetizing customers. And at the moment, there's a lot of debate, conversations around the bookings and how people can increase their bookings, how they can make their business more profitable, more efficient, and all of these other things that we're talking about. And to actually have a survey which helps to highlight things which certainly guests of the future and what we're seeing now already coming through the system are going to be demanding, and not just in a small way. They're actually going to be making their buying decisions based on this. So that's really interesting. But one of the things that I want to touch on is about greenwashing, because this is something that I've seen many businesses do, and often some large hotels who after COVID, they were saying, from my own experience of staying at some of these places when I was going to conferences and meetings and so on, I would pick up the notes that the hotel had left me saying, oh, we've made everything in the room very basic because we don't want to spread COVID, and our environmental credentials means that we have only given you one small towel, and we won't be washing it, we won't be cleaning the room between, because this is all our environmental ethos now. And to me, actually no, because you're still cleaning the room with these terrible, harsh products, which are definitely not environmentally friendly. So actually, you're just greenwashing. And what you're doing is you're using COVID, you're using pandemic, and you're using the environment as a way of saying you're doing all these things, but you're just saving money. You're trying to increase your profit. And that's greenwashing in my view. So, I mean, this is a huge debate in itself, probably, but what's your view of maybe the guest preference around greenwashing, but also, are they clever enough to figure that out in general, would you say? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, right? It's become such an issue with these larger hotel chains with greenwashing, and you also brought up a very good point on, the part of where we associate sustainability with sacrifice. And I think that, to address, kind of to go back to what you were speaking of in terms of the greenwashing, when you add in these visible eco attributes or eco innovations, I think it really helps to prevent the feeling of greenwashing, where you can then build that trust because they can see it for themselves, right? Here's our solar, here's our EV chargers. You can clearly see all of the labels on all of our products are labeled as bio or organic or non-toxic for the environment. It's non-detrimental. You can see these things, maybe touch these things. Of course, that's not to say that, the training piece should be left out, because that, again, is very, very important when you're implementing an eco or sustainable program, to train the staff, to educate them, to help them educate the guests on this. Again, adds that value where they say, okay, oh, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this. And then I think that eliminates some of the feeling of, oh, I have to sacrifice something to be more eco-friendly, because you don't. That's absolutely not the case. I think a lot of people, particularly smaller business owners are saying, okay, well, I don't want this for my guests, because they're going to, think that the value is less, or, they have to do some sort of sacrifice, like you said, with the towels, or, the automated lights when you walk into the bathroom that don't really function so well, because then you're halfway through and you're sitting there in the dark, right? So you don't have to have the sacrifice with it. And I think that's a part of my research as well, is how can we add to the guest experience and the guest journey without sacrifice. And in terms of the greenwashing, this happens quite often. We saw, you have these big hotel chains. Yeah, we clean up the ocean every year. It's like, well, do you? We have no way to actually know if you do or not, because you'll look it up online. You'll try and dig into it on their website. You can't find anything. So I think transparency is absolutely key as well to combat any ideas of greenwashing, because it can be quite difficult for the average guest to decipher or kind of dive into that.
So do you think they're much more savvy, this generation, to these things?
Good question. I think they're, I guess you could use the word more woke. Joe Rogan has nicely mentioned, but I think the generation's definitely more woke in that sense, that they are more aware. It's more important to them than previous generations, like the boomer generation, where they're actively looking into being more sustainable at home. When they travel, they're absolutely more conscious.
I certainly am myself. I feel that I've always been on the side of rooting for Mother Earth and, making decisions based on that. I do speak for, I have teenagers in my family at the moment, and they do have some mixed opinions. Some of the teenagers that I come into contact with, they're quite interested with what they talk about. And, there's quite a bit of blame at times for generations like mine and older that have done a lot to mess up the environment. But then they are fighting also this desire for consumerism, and to wear a particular thing and be a particular way and follow a particular trend, and all of these things that we've probably all had been exposed to. But I think now particularly those generations are exposed to it much more because of social media and everything else they're seeing on the news and on their devices. And so how do you think, I know this is probably just a question, it's probably too big, but how do you think there's eco accommodation can kind of attract people of that generation in a kind of, as you're saying, don't sacrifice, look at this as something that's fun to do and a new trend, and it's modern and it's vibrant, and yet it is still environmentally sensitive? What do you think they could do? Is it about improving the structures, improving the service? Is it about making it more trendy, more modern? What do you think is coming out in the industry at the moment?
Right. Well, I think always having a unique space that encompasses the local culture and uniqueness and authenticity of the area is always a wonderful experience for this generation. They're not looking for the Disney themed hotels like we all did in the 90s. They're looking for a more authentic, pure experience. So I think anytime that you can add that in, it's always an add-on for them. It's always a value add-on. So for one example would be if you've got, a hotel somewhere in a smaller village, more remote, adding in local vendors to pop up their fruit stand or their food truck, every Thursday, then you're not only helping the community, but you're also giving your guests a very unique and authentic experience that also is more sustainable, right? And these things don't have to cost you any more money. You can work out an agreement with local vendors to come in and sell their honey, things like this, where everyone wins. I think there's definitely a value in that for that generation and for eco-conscious travelers and quite frankly, everyone. Why not, right? Who wouldn't want to come in and have that unique experience, feel like you're immersed in that lifestyle? I think this is why Airbnb started taking off so quickly. Back in the day, just because they offered that authentic experience. You feel like you live there, you belong there, you're a part of it, you're fully immersed. So I think there's definitely some high value in that spectrum for sure.
It's really interesting. So with your business in Germany, where are you based in Germany, by the way? Is it north, south, east, west? Which
Sure.
one?
We are just outside of the greater Frankfurt area. We're out in Rheingau wine country.
And what kind of ideas have you got at the moment for your business and structures and so on, if you're willing to share?
Sure. So right now, everything's been put on ice. The pestle wasn't looking too great over the past few months out here in Europe. We had more or less all the pieces of the puzzle put together. We had, developers, investors. We were just missing the land piece of it. But then in the last 6 months, everything that's been going on, unfortunately, with Ukraine and the energy crises and the labor shortages, and we've decided to put everything on ice. And at the moment, we're now working on a project out in the States, so Greater Lake Tahoe area. So I'm actually working on facilitating and putting together a team. We've actually got some very great people on the team so far. We're in the works with a few people that have been on some of your earlier podcasts as well. So that's in the work, but I guess that's another podcast for another day. But we are working with eco resort operator, and we are scouting land at the moment. So we're hoping to build up something out there that would be really special, unique, and first of its kind in that area.
Oh, that sounds really intriguing. Well, I can't wait for you to let me know when you're ready to talk about it. But
Absolutely.
I think you really highlighted there just something that so many people are going through at the moment, which is the pivot. And in fact, it's a word that I've never heard talked about so much since 2019, when the pandemic first hit, and then of course the economy was crumbling and is continuing to crumble, and everything else going on in the world with the political changes and wars and you name it, we've got it seems at the moment. But the pivot is particularly interesting, and actually a business owner's ability to bend, shape, and be flexible to the situation going on is just so important. And often people see it and talk about it as if it's a failure almost, that they've had to pivot and they've had to change. But I absolutely do not think that at all. And I think it's great to hear you talking about that, as in, well, we've put this project on ice, but we're working on this project, which at the moment is probably better because of X, Y, and Z. So I think that's brilliant. A really great example of someone pivoting and doing, responding to their environment. And, this kind of business epigenetics right there. It's really interesting.
Right.
So it's really good to hear.
Yeah, I think it is tough because, you've worked so hard and so long on one particular project, and then you're almost there, you're almost ready to pull the trigger, and then, politically things start to crumble around you, and you say, okay, this is really not looking good. And then something else happens, and then you get to your point where you're like, okay, well, we've just got to put it on ice. And I don't think, you don't have to be discouraged by it. I know we'll pick it back up when things look a little bit better. We are looking at doing some other projects in Portugal as well. So, nothing lost there, because I think everything is a learning experience, and everything, even if you don't know it, the work you've put in somewhere at this point, even if you don't end up bringing it to fruition, it's still a learning experience. And maybe 5 years from now, maybe next month, that education and that information will be useful to you in some unexpected way. So I don't think, my advice would be not to get too discouraged on it. It's going to benefit you in some way, shape, or form, and just keep going, keep pushing forward, and don't look back.
Keep learning, stay curious, and get support when you need it. That's absolutely for sure. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's just been a pleasure to speak with you. You're obviously very knowledgeable about what's going on in the industry, particularly with the younger generations. And I cannot wait to hear more about your projects as you progress.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, just say how someone can get in touch with you, your website, and maybe contact details.
Sure. I think we're working on the website at the moment, but anyone can reach out to me via LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/in/Rachel, Rachel Bowers, Bowers. And I'd be happy to share the full case study with anyone. If anyone wants to read through a 100-page academic paper, I'd be happy to send it over, or just, discuss. I'm always interested in getting involved and hearing other people's stories, because again, I think information sharing is the best way to push forward in this space. You've got such a niche here, and it's like its own little community. So I think whenever we can help each other out, we should. So I'm always open for communication.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Lovely to speak to you today.
Thank you. You as well.
As always, if you found this helpful, if you found this useful, if it's going to change the way you do business in the future, then please leave a review. We read every single one that we get, and we are so grateful. And if you want some extra support, some masterclasses on how to set up a glamping business, how to get your guests, how to get support from a community of like-minded people, go over to the Glamping Academy. You can find that hosted on inspiredcourses.com. Alternatively, you can just put into your lovely search bar on Google glamping.academy. I'm looking forward very much to hearing from you. Take care, have a fantastic time, and hope you can join me here again.